Hello everybody and welcome to This Upbeat Life, the show where we take a light-hearted look at life and go on a journey to find out how people stay physically and mentally happy. I'm Simon JJ Green and I'll be interviewing ordinary, bog-standard people as well as looking at the latest in wellness, health science, nature and the quirkier side of the health and wellbeing industry. Now, let's get cracking with today's episode. Hello and a warm welcome. On today's episode, we're going to be talking about all things blue. On quick news, are you feeling blue and always wanted a dog, but mum and dad said no? Well, good news. Recent research has found that pet owners, especially dog owners, could benefit from improved gut health because they share a home with their beloved Fido. Well, when I was doing further research, I found that dog owners, as I am, are also at a lower risk of death and cardiovascular disease. Oh, happy days. Another recent study found that teenagers with dogs were less socially withdrawn and had fewer behavioural problems. And there's even evidence that children who grow up with dogs may have lower risks of asthma and certain immune disorders, possibly because early exposure to microbes helps to train the immune system. It's a concept sometimes connected to what scientists call the hygiene hypothesis, the idea being that modern life has become so clean, so sanitized, that our immune systems sometimes become a little overenthusiastic. And without enough exposure to everyday microbes, the body may start reacting to harmless things like pollen or dust and pets. So in a way, being exposed to microbes may help restore a bit of that microbial balance. And not forgetting the old crusties, that's the elderly people like myself. Long-term data showed that pet ownership could help slow certain aspects of cognitive decline, including memory or verbal fluency, though my partner would probably argue on that one. Now, broadly speaking, pets may subtly shape our biology through shared microbes. Yeah, you and your dog share germs all the time, potentially influencing immune function and overall health because of an increase in microbial diversity. Now, the National Centre for Health Research has also summarised studies showing pet owners often have lower blood pressure, less stress, fewer doctor visits, and more exercise, as well as stronger social connections. Now, if you're a dog owner, you probably say hello to other dog owners and people on your daily walk. So, how does having a dog actually improve your gut health? Not forgetting that gut health is a big trending topic this year and last year. Well, researchers studying what's called the household microbiome have found that humans and dogs share microbes just by living together, as I mentioned earlier. The microbiome is a universe, a vast ecosystem of bacteria, fungi, and other microorganisms that live in and on our bodies. In fact, the human body contains trillions of microbes, and they play an important role in everything from digestion to immune function. And this reinforces the idea that the homes we live in are really tiny ecosystems, full of invisible life, moving between people, pets, plants, and the outdoors. Now, I guess this sounds slightly strange at first. After all, when most of us think about dogs and hygiene, the first image that comes to mind is muddy paws on the carpet or a tennis ball covered in slobber and other unidentified substances. Of course, this doesn't mean that your dog is secretly a probiotic supplement with a wagging tail. However, recent studies have found that dog owners may carry some of the same antibiotic-resistant genes found in their pets. And this sort of illustrates the complexity of microbial exchange. Think about how we interact with our pets every day. We pet them. They sit next to us on the sofa or sleep on our beds. They run through parks, fields and gardens. They love to dig. They roll in disgusting things. Mine love to roll in fox poo. And then they come back inside and generously share the microbes they've picked up. Sometimes they enthusiastically lick our faces, which, depending on your perspective, is either adorable or mildly alarming, depending on where they've just had their snout. And you can put your hand up right now if you're guilty of giving your pampered pooch a kiss or two. I know my two hands probably get at least 2 or 3 kisses each, every hour. So, every one of these interactions is an opportunity for microbes to move between species, and studies have shown that homes with dogs tend to have greater microbial diversity. So in simple terms, that means there's a wider variety of microorganisms present in the environment. But of course, as in every show I host, I have to say the science behind all this is still developing. Pets can also carry germs we'd rather not share, and it goes without saying, though I am going to say it, weird. Good hygiene still matters. Things like washing your hands after handling pet food or cleaning up after animals properly. But overall, the research is painting a fascinating picture, which means the next time your dog comes home charging in from the park, covered in enthusiasm, mud, and fox poo, and jumps straight onto the sofa, and technically they're doing you and your gut a favour. Up next on The Real Deal, blue zones, where people live well into their 90s and hundreds. Now, if someone told you there were places in the world where people regularly live past 100, and they do it while eating beans, walking up hills and hanging out with their friends, you might think you'd discovered the ultimate life hack, the veritable fountain of youth. So long as you like beans, of course. Now, no expensive supplements, no ice baths, no waking up at 4 a.m. to journal your life away while standing on one leg and waiting for the sun to rise. No, it's just people living. Well, welcome to the fascinating subject of blue zones, a topic I've been interested in for years. Now, these are regions made famous by a journalist called Dan Buettner, and they include communities in places like Okinawa, Sardinia, and Ikaria. But is the secret to long life really just eating beans, having good friendships, and going on long walks? Or is this all a load of old tosh? Now, the idea of blue zones became widely known thanks to the efforts of Buettner, who's a journalist and an explorer. In the early 2000s, he began investigating communities around the world where people seemed to live unusually long, active and healthy lives. He worked with researchers and demographers to identify 5 places where longevity appeared to cluster. Now, those places were Okinawa in Japan, Sardinia in Italy, Ikaria in Greece, the Nicoya Peninsula in Costa Rica, and Loma Linda in California. And in these communities, people were regularly reaching their 90s and even their hundreds while staying active, social, and surprisingly healthy. Not a cryogenic freezer in sight. And of course, scientists were curious. And the rest of us thought, well, come on, spill the beans. Yes, pun intended. Because if there's a village somewhere where people are happily celebrating their 103rd birthday while tending the garden and making soup, we'd quite like to know what they're up to. I mean, is there a secret fountain of youth somewhere? So researchers began looking at the daily habits of the people living in these places, and they noticed that the residents weren't doing anything out of the ordinary. They weren't biohacking, they weren't obsessing over protein macros, and they definitely weren't posting their morning routine on Instagram. Ooh, look at me eating my eggless omelette and drinking mushroom coffee. No, instead their lifestyles had a few simple patterns common amongst all the blue zone communities. Firstly, they moved naturally, which means no gym workouts. Just everyday movement. Walking, gardening, climbing hills, doing chores. The kind of activity your grandparents might call just getting on with it. I have a feeling that these people are walking way more than 10,000 steps a day. Now, secondly, they ate mostly plants. Beans, vegetables, whole grains, nuts, and meat appeared occasionally but not in enormous portions. That's disappointing, as I was hoping for cake. And yes, in some places, there is wine involved. Good. So already the blue zone lifestyle is sounding fairly appealing, apart from the lack of cake. Third, they've got strong social connections. Family matters, their community matters. People eat together, they talk together, and they support each other. And it turns out that being socially connected may be one of the most powerful health habits of all. And then there's purpose. In Okinawa, they even have a word for it, ikigai. It roughly means a reason to wake up in the morning or a reason for being. It seems that having a sense of purpose, something meaningful to do, appears to play an essential role in long, happy lives. Now, we all know that loneliness in the elderly is a killer. And finally, many blue zone communities share some simple habits around eating and coping with stress. People tend not to overeat, and that's probably why I don't live in a blue zone. They often follow natural rhythms, slower meals, smaller portions, definitely not me, and regular routines. And importantly, they know how to relax, which is something modern life doesn't always allow us mere mortals. So all of this adds up to a pretty interesting idea. Live simply, eat well, stay active, and spend time with people you love. And maybe, just maybe, you'll add a couple of extra decades to your life. And in the summer of 2025, I was fortunate enough to have a holiday in Costa Rica. and I decided to travel over to the Nicoya Peninsula and see if I could find a centenarian and ask them for myself. I did find out a couple of things. There were not many centenarians on display. In fact, I didn't find any. Asking locals if they had any elderly people lying about that I could talk to was met with some alarm. The oldest person I met was 83, and they looked it. Definitely not a spring chicken. Also, asking locals about blue zones was met with mostly blank stares and shrugs of shoulders. But everyone could quote Costa Rica's Pura Vida, pure life, the unofficial national motto of Costa Rica, representing a sort of a laid-back, optimistic and grateful philosophy. Pura Vida is used as a greeting, farewell, or to mean everything is good or no worries. It encourages slowing down, enjoying and appreciating life's simple pleasures. Perhaps a hint to the fabled longevity of the invisible centenarians. Now, I also discovered that apart from delicious beans served with every meal in Costa Rica, the people are warm and friendly and passionate about their country, and Costa Rica is an absolute paradise for wildlife. Anyway, back to the blue zones in general. Now, do you think that people and corporations would financially capitalize on the phenomena of blue zones? Well, of course they would. If something can be monetized, the greedy, blood-sucking leeches are going to be there. Now, Dan Buettner decided to do just that and trademarked the words blue zones. Books have been written, documentaries have been made, and there's even a Netflix series called Live to 100 Secrets of the Blue Zones. Cities around the world have tried to become blue zone certified by encouraging healthier environments, after they've paid Buettner and his pals for a certification program, of course. Do I sound cynical? And the companies have even created blue zone branded foods, for goodness sake, which is perhaps slightly ironic, because the people in the original blue zones probably aren't buying any branded longevity tinned beans. But not everyone agrees that blue zones are quite as utopian as they appear. Some researchers have raised questions about the data behind these incredibly old ages. One scientist in particular, Saul Justin Newman, has suggested that in some places the number of centenarians might be inflated by, issues with paperwork. Think about birth records from more than 100 years ago. In rural areas, especially in the early 1900s, record keeping, if any, wasn't always perfect. Some people didn't have official birth certificates. Some deaths went unreported. Birth dates were made up, and occasionally ages might just get a little bit fuzzy. In fact, in 2010, the government of Japan discovered something surprising. More than 200,000 registered centenarians were technically missing. In many cases, they had simply died years earlier before their 100th birthday without it being recorded, while their families continued collecting their pensions, which means they were still listed as being extremely old, but just on paper. So critics argue that some of the blue zone longevity might be due to inaccurate records rather than miraculous health. And there's one more thing. Blue zones seem to be disappearing. According to Buettner, places like Nicoya Peninsula and Okinawa no longer really qualify as a blue zone. Fast food and convenience stores have put pay to that, and he reckons that the other blue zones will follow suit in less than a generation. Meanwhile, Linda Loma in California has a population of about 9,000 Seventh-day Adventists who follow a religious-based lifestyle of abstinence called the Health Message. This lifestyle is rooted in the belief that the body is a temple of the Holy Spirit. Therefore, you have to look after it. But even if I am cynical and some of the numbers are imperfect, the lifestyle patterns behind blue zones still make a lot of sense. Eating plenty of plants, moving your body naturally, finding purpose, managing stress, and most importantly, maintaining friendships and family connections. Now, I'm sure you'll agree that none of these ideas are controversial. If anything, they align very closely with what scientists already understand about healthy aging. Experts in longevity research say that blue zone idea isn't really a controlled scientific study, and that it's more like an observation, a sort of a collection of habits that seem to show up again and again in communities where people age well. So, to quickly recap, it seems that longevity comes from environment and lifestyle, from living in places where the healthy choice is simply a normal choice, where walking is a part of a person's day, where meals are leisurely shared, not hurriedly bolted down solo in front of the TV, where people stay connected and where no one is trying to optimize their mitochondria before breakfast. In fact, If you visited one of these communities, I did, you probably wouldn't find people talking about longevity at all. But they don't. They'd just be living life well, which means, good news, maybe we don't need to move to a remote Greek island or a hilltop village in Sardinia, as appealing as it may sound. But we can borrow a few ideas. There's nothing stopping us from going for a regular walk, for example, or even better if it's with friends. We can cook something simple and call a friend or two and have them come over for dinner, making sure that they bring wine. We can also spend quality time with family without electronics being involved. And that, I think, fits perfectly with the spirit of this upbeat life. Actually, hang on, wait a minute. I've just realised that all these so-called blue zones are in hot places. Not one of them's in a place like, I don't know, Siberia. On far-out stuff, the Smurf drug, Methylene Blue. What is it, and why do fitness influencers tout this biohacker supplement? Methylene Blue is often hyped by online wellness and fitness influencers as something beneficial and has recently become a fashionable biohacker supplement promoted online for brain power, energy, and longevity. However, the scientific and medical view is far more cautious. But what is biohacking, you may ask? Well, according to the interweb, biohacking is a DIY approach to biology and wellness, where individuals make incremental, intentional changes to their diet, lifestyle, and environment to optimize their health performance and overall well-being. So where does this Methylene Blue stuff fit in all this? Well, if TikTok is to be believed, all you need is a few drops of this bright blue liquid, and suddenly your brain is sharper, your energy is higher, and you're basically one step away from being immortal. But before we all start turning ourselves into cheerful blue cartoon characters, let's have a quick shufty into what it's all about. First of all, what exactly is Methylene Blue? Surprisingly, it wasn't invented by a dodgy health startup trying to sell you a £50 a month brain optimization kit. No, it actually dates back to the 19th century, when it was originally used as a textile dye and is still used as a disinfectant for fish tanks. Not exactly the origin story of a miracle brain supplement. Over time, however, doctors discovered it had legitimate medical uses. In hospitals, Methylene Blue is a real prescription drug used to treat a condition called methemoglobinemia, which affects how blood carries oxygen. Doctors also use it in certain diagnostic tests or for some poisoning treatments. But, and this is a big but, outside of these medical situations, taking it as a daily wellness supplement is where things start to get a bit shady. But why are influencers so excited about it? Well, in the world of biohacking, there's a big fascination with mitochondria. Yes, the powerhouse of the cell. Biohackers love the idea that if you can make these power stations run more efficiently, you'll have more energy, better focus, and potentially a longer life. And some laboratory studies on animals, that's very naughty, use humans instead, suggest that Methylene Blue might help your cells produce energy more efficiently, and researchers have seen hints that it might protect brain cells or help with memory, a boon for Alzheimer's scientists. And this is where the internet takes a running leap into the void of scientific ignorance, because what starts off as interesting lab research often changes into, this will supercharge your brain by the time it reaches social media. Advocates claim it helps with things like mental clarity, energy, focus, and even anti-aging, which sounds amazing. I mean, who wouldn't want a brighter brain and a longer life, even if you're a bit blue? But unfortunately, human evidence is still very limited. Even though there are lots of people out there taking this Smurf tonic, they're not being tested, which is a missed opportunity by the scientists, I feel. Most of the research is small, early stage, or done on animals. Again, naughty. And unfortunately, mice with excellent memory doesn't necessarily translate into humans suddenly remembering where they left their car keys. But are there any downsides? Well, yeah, there are a few. First of all, Methylene Blue isn't some harmless wellness tonic. It actually affects brain chemistry and can interact with certain medications. In particular, it can interact with antidepressants and cause something called serotonin syndrome, which can be dangerous. So this is definitely not something to casually experiment with if you're already on any meds. Now, there are some other fun side effects. For example, it can turn your wee a lovely shade of blue-green, and even your skin can turn a nice shade of blue if you take too much, which might be a surprise if you've forgotten that you've taken it. Now, you'll often see online influencers putting drops directly on their tongue, which makes them look like they've just had a raspberry-flavoured ice lolly. Actually, why are all raspberry-flavoured stuff blue? Anyway, at higher doses, there can also be side effects like headaches, nausea, dizziness, and changes in blood pressure. And another issue is that many products sold online aren't pharmaceutical grade, which means you may not always know exactly what's in the bottle that you bought from a dodgy website called ultrabraingeniusboost.com or Amazon. Now, you might be wondering, if the evidence is shaky, why has it become so popular? Well, several things come together at the perfect moment. First, the biohacking movement, the idea that we can optimize our bodies like software updates, a step closer to the $6 million man, if you will. Yes, okay, I've just dated myself. Now, second, longevity research, where scientists are exploring ways to slow aging and protect the brain. And third, the Silicon Valley productivity culture, where people are constantly searching for a mental edge to prevent burnout in their oh-so-essential jobs. And finally, social media, because it's about color. I mean, methylene blue is a very dramatic color. When someone drops it into water, it turns the liquid a bright electric blue. Great for eye-catching Insta and TikTok videos. Now, I looked the stuff up online and it seems to be quite easy to buy. Prices seem to be around £30 for 20 to 30 mils. But there were some murky websites selling the stuff, including Etsy of all places. Now, while methylene blue is still trending in wellness circles, most doctors remain cautious. Their general view is simple. It's a real drug with genuine medical uses, but it's not a proven brain-boosting supplement for healthy people, just yet. Now, if you enjoyed today's episode of This Upbeat Life, please follow the podcast and share it with someone who might appreciate a little extra positivity in their day. Until next time, stay curious, stay upbeat, and avoid any blue snow. And that's it for today. Thanks for listening, everybody. As always, I'd appreciate it if you could like, follow, and subscribe to my show, This Upbeat Life, so I know I'm on the right track. And even better, leave a review and share it with your friends. Until next time, remember, happiness is the best medicine. Cheerio.